Yes, folks, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. This weekend's grand opening of Parlay Restaurants and Sports, located in Jing'an, Shanghai, your new favorite spot for barbecue, burgers, and so much more. Come out to watch all your favorite sporting events. Enjoy brunches weekends starting at 11 on our terrace. Test your skill at darts, pool, and golden tea, an icon bar classic. 9 beers on draft, the freshest barbecue cooked daily, and so much more. This Saturday, starting at 5 p.m., followed by our first brunch Sunday at 11. Parlay, we have you covered from kickoff to last call.
It's BCMC.
Yeah.
Black China baby.
Break it, broke it, lucky we ain't broke. Break it, broken English niggas ain't no joke. Break it, broke it, lucky we ain't broke. Break it, broken English niggas ain't no joke. Now who that? Pussy a hole, remove that. We do that. Break it, Who that wanna play around? Put him in the ground right now. Who that wanna play with mine? I make him feel the brown cow. Put the food up in his eye. Make him broke like glass. If the girl is fine, I make a pie. Give the ball, you can't score. When I'm on, it's too raw. When my man in the door, when we coming, it's for war. Break the broke it, lucky we ain't broke. Break the broken English niggas ain't no joke. Any side we be on, when we come, it's a storm. Just like Espen, I'm the best and ask that bitch, I fuck the best and break the broke it, niggas ain't no joke. Break the broke it, lucky we ain't broke. Break the broken English niggas ain't no joke. Now who that? Pussy asshole, remove that. We do that. Break the broke it.
摇摆的节奏最后拉，在高喊的街头叫马拉加，代表冲上艺术家，画幅画在云瓦上面画图帕，在玻璃毛墙上刷涂鸦。你猜巴不勒是谁？那 who that？ 你猜我是谁？当时面具不想被你们参透，今天不玩穿就和你 off road， 来推口，不要 baby go， 不管喜不喜欢你的屁股跟着扭。金发的女孩紧紧捏着头，她拉住我的手，感觉像 blow。我在她身后感觉像个帆布，她在我的前面90度的扳头。那 who that？ 管你是谁，管他是谁。那 who that？ 黄色是谁？黑色是谁？那 who that？ 男人是谁？女人是谁？那 who that？ 老人是谁？小孩是谁？
Broke it, lucky we ain't broke. Break the broken English niggas ain't no joke. Now who that? Pussy a hole, remove that. We do that. Break the
It's BCMC.
I told you.
现在你知道中国有 drill 了吗？
BCMC man, Afro drill man, Skinny O.G rum D man.
Black China baby.
Hello everyone, Craig here. Welcome to another edition of the podcast, Tell Craig Your Story. First off, I'd just like to say that I'm super proud that Jen's Curfew won the best live band in Shanghai at the That's Shanghai Awards night on Wednesday night. I want to thank everybody for their support and for voting for us. Today we'll be speaking to Skinny O.G. Now, Skinny O.G is a hip-hop and rap artist. He was born in Cameroon but was raised in New York. Now, Skinny was a serious hip-hop artist at the age of 7, where he started competing in breakdancing. Now, Skinny has performed in Cameroon, France, and many cities across the US, and earned his reputation as a fierce freestyle phenomenon. Now, Skinny arrived in Shanghai in 2015, and since then, he's performed hundreds of shows across Asia. Skinny O.G was one of the very few hip-hop artists to ever appear on Chinese TV. And two of my favorite songs are The D-Boys and Do You Speak Chinese? Now, Skinny is also the founder of the Black China Music Company, which he brings out his own albums. And he's also helping hip-hop and rap in China as well. And the first track you heard from the start of the podcast was Who Dat? And the second one you hear will be America. But before we go, please go to our website. We're at Podbean. Tell Craig Your Story at podbean.com. We have a link tree there which tells you where Tell Craig Your Story podcast is streaming. We're on all the major streaming services. We're also on social media. Make sure you're subscribing and liking to get all the latest updates. And we have VK for our Russian listeners, and Little Red Book and WeChat for our Chinese listeners. All right, here we go. This is my chat with Skinny O.G. on Tell Craig Your Story podcast. Skinny, how you doing today, mate?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Yeah.
Very busy, but I actually just come back from Europe. 3 weeks in Europe. Had an amazing time.
Yeah. And congratulations to you on your 150th podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. The last time that we spoke, I saw you perform at the We Are Shanghai. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a yearly thing. It's a good friend of mine named Sishan, and he's been in this city longer than I have. He's been rocking the underground music scene out here for a long time, and every year they organize a concert for the most some of the best underground music in Shanghai for the year. So I've been doing that concert now. That was probably my fourth or fifth.
Wow. We Are Shanghai.
Fifth appearance in We Are Shanghai.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was my band played there on the same night as well. But I was talking about the story where you actually went to the other YYT park. I heard the story where you were sitting there at the YYT park and it's like, where's all the crowd?
So there was a band on stage because they have multiple locations. So I go to this other location and there's a band on stage and they're warming up for something. So I'm like, okay, I must be in the right place.
Yeah.
I grab a beer, I sit down, and I start talking to the bartender. It's incredible how you can talk to someone who doesn't speak English and I don't speak Chinese. And we were still having a conversation. He was like, I think you want to be at the other place. The performance here tonight is all Chinese bands. And I was like, really? And so, they were like, you go out this way, go out to the... I was like, oh, okay. And this all happened in like literal damn near sign language. Like, it's amazing somehow how you can communicate with someone even when you don't speak the same language.
Yeah, exactly. Because we had a set time for people to go on stage, and it was your turn to perform, and it's like, where's Skinny?
Yeah.
Where is he?
I'm like, I'm here, guys. Where is everybody? And they're like, you're not here. Like, oh, you mean the other YYT?
The other YYT. You're not the only one that it's happened to.
Yeah.
I
They
think
got like 3 locations now.
They've got 3 YYTs,
in Shanghai.
Yeah, well, that one just shut down recently, but there's the YYT Park, and then there's another YYT that they've just opened up as well.
Okay.
So let's talk about Black China Music Company.
All right.
How did this all come about? Is this something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I've been doing music since I was 16. And
I heard you started at 7 years old.
Yeah. When I was 7, I was a break dancer.
Wow.
So, I grew up in New York City, and when I was 7, so this was like early 80s.
Yeah.
And
what a time to be in New York City. In the early 80s.
Early 80s.
So tell us about that. I mean, the music scene was pumping at that stage.
It's like, it's always funny when like you were there and you saw history happen. Yeah. And then people can talk about it. And usually when you hear people talk about it, I chuckle because it's like you guys have no idea. Like everything you see now in the hip hop we were there, like we started it.
Yes.
And we didn't start it intentionally to be what it is now, but it was just our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like we would hang out, we started breakdancing because that's how we were expressing ourselves at that time. And it was an alternative to fighting.
Yes.
Which is incredible because New York, having come out of the 70s, deindustrialization, the destruction of a lot of neighborhoods that got ripped apart, ever since the civil rights movements of the 60s and the 70s, and the areas of New York that became the worst affected, such as the South Bronx, for example.
The Bronx, right.
And even uptown, because I lived on Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
Right? I lived on the Lower East Side. So you go uptown to Harlem, all those areas, it was rough. It was very violent. It was and it got only worse with the influx of drugs. It used to be heroin, then crack cocaine. And as all these things were happening, us kids, as we witnessed this, there started being a shift away from the violent gangs that had started becoming more and more violent in the 70s, where for us kids it was like, well, I can dance better than you.
Yeah.
And so the dances were battles. So at that time I wasn't a rapper. I was a kid. I was 6-7 years old. Yes. So I was part of a group of guys in my neighborhood, and we would dance against guys from other areas.
Yeah.
And the authorities, the cops and stuff you'd still get arrested. And it didn't really, we were kids, so we weren't thinking of it in a really political sense, but thinking about it now, it's like, it doesn't make sense that was their reaction.
Yes.
You had the fact that, okay, a lot of civil rights leaders, a ton of them, most of them, got killed, assassinated, arrested, eliminated, exiled. And this led to an influx of gangs in the late 60s. And so when hip hop started in the early 70s now, I guess that was like a reaction of trying to get away from where things were headed with, drugs and violence. And so for us kids growing up where, we were like, okay, well, we were just following that line of, yeah, let's do this. Instead of stabbing each other, let me show you this move that I can do that you can't do.
Yeah.
But the cops would still arrest us when we were dancing.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
On what grounds, but what are they arresting you on? Is it just political, or?
It's definitely political.
Yeah.
The charges that they would use would be silly stuff, like they'd what would they say? Disturbing the peace, obstructing the sidewalk.
Just petty stuff.
Petty stuff. And it's kind of like a reflection of the fact that there were a lot of laws that were intentionally created after the Civil War in America. When slavery was abolished, all of a sudden all these new laws pop out that they can still use to target the minority communities, the black people. So that was just a continuation of that. Like, okay, we're not doing anything but dancing, but they'll still find a reason to lock us up, because just seeing a group of black kids together was enough of a reason to round them up. And truancy is like, truancy, it's the weekend. I'm not supposed to be in school. It's Saturday.
Yeah.
But it's like, whatever they could write down, as long as they could get you off the street and throw you in the back of a squad car or take you downtown to the station, call your parents to come pick you up.
Yeah.
That's what they would do.
Yeah, right. But did that make you a stronger person, Bart? These guys that are trying to stop you from doing something that you really enjoy doing?
I think it made all of hip hop stronger.
Yeah.
And it made us a lot more conscious about what we were doing. So that's probably where you saw, because in the very beginning, hip hop was party music.
Yeah.
But with that kind of a reaction from the dominant society, well, then hip hop became political in the late 80s. By the late 80s, you had Public Enemy, which was like my favorite group ever at the time, And it became much more political, much more vocal about social injustice. Because, the more you try to, as Martin Luther King famously said, if you try to hold someone down, you got to stay down with them.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere either.
Yeah.
And so that tension, it did make it made hip hop stronger. It helped define what we stand for.
And you were saying you were 7 years old. So then when did you started singing?
I made my first mixtape when I was 16.
Right.
And by this time I wasn't in New York. I was in Cameroon.
Right.
Because my family's originally from
Cameroon.
Cameroon.
Born in Cameroon.
I'm
right.
born in Cameroon.
Right.
Went to New York when I was 1 year old.
Mm.
So at 16, I was living back in Cameroon, and I'd been living in France for a while before that, then Cameroon, and in all these places I went, I was viewed as kind of like a hip hop ambassador.
Mm.
I knew the coolest moves. I knew the coolest slang, and people would refer to me to ask me, well, what's hip, what's not, what's popping, what's not, what's happening. And
what's the in thing? What's cool at the moment?
Yeah. And so by the time I was 16, I felt like I wanted to speak about what I knew about what's wrong with society and the world,
right,
and what we can do about it. So that's when I started making music. And it was very, very consciously oriented.
So when you first started writing music, what were you writing about? Was it living in all these different places, or was it family experiences, or
mostly living in these different places, and the politics of poverty,
right?
The politics of poverty, understanding that although most people think that the big struggle in society, like in America, is between black and white, the majority versus the minority, these racial, ethnic groups, what you understand with the conscious mind is that it's really more about class struggle. It's really just about class struggle. Ever since the founding fathers of America went there, their idea was that human rights only belonged to rich white males, not even like all white males, just the rich ones, the landowners.
Yeah.
And so based on that, that's what built the modern structure of global capitalism we see. The fact that a racial element entered into it was more of a byproduct of the fact that the rich landowners decided to enslave other people and colonize other people who were from different places, so they look different.
Yes.
So then you have to demonize those people in order to justify what you're doing. And that's where the racial element came into it. But in a larger sense, no, it's a class struggle.
Yes.
It's about those who have wanting to take from the have-nots. And that's the world we live in.
I hear you.
And so that's what I was talking about, trying to inspire young kids to make the right decisions so they could play a pivotal role, so they can make it to adulthood and play a role in shaping the future.
Yes.
And mind you, part of the reason I was so conscious is because at this time in Cameroon was going through its own political turmoil at this time.
Yes.
Which was a struggle for more democracy. Like, the people were tired of being under a dictator and they were struggling. And I knew a lot of people who were in the underground resistance. And these were people who would, organize protests. These were people who would help organize political opposition parties to the government party, which at the time was illegal because it was a one-party state.
Right.
And so it was very dangerous. A lot of people got killed. People I knew got killed in this political struggle. And so that really galvanized my need to speak.
Yes.
Because coming from America, despite what some may say about, it's a censorship republic kind of coming out these days. But still there is more freedom of speech than in a lot of places.
Yes.
So I felt like, well, I'm going to say something about it. But it was dangerous what we were doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, but we did it anyway.
Yeah. And it says also that you were in Atlanta and Washington. I've been to both of them cities. How does that compare to somewhere like where you grew up in New York? I knew in Atlanta there's a lot of the black community is there, very strong and powerful.
Atlanta's cool. Atlanta became kind of like a mecca. Well, it is. It became a mecca for black people, which it always had a large black population.
Yes.
I believe it was the first city that ever elected a black mayor.
Yes.
And so it's become a mecca for black people. And in the modern era where things have improved a little bit from where they used to be, so it's only grown in prominence because of that fact.
Yes.
Washington, D.C., however, is very different because D.C. always had a large black population ever since the end of the Civil War. So they used to call it Chocolate City. It was a city with the largest percentage of black people. Fast forward a quick decade, because I lived in D.C. 10, 15 years, gentrification happens, where now that all the property values are rock bottom, you have a new generation of younger white people who want to move back into the cities. After all of their parents had fled to the suburbs, the suburban flight, all of these young people want to move back into the cities, and the properties are cheap. So you have real estate developers who buy up all the cheap land, build really nice houses, but now black people can't afford to live there anymore. So black people have to move out to the suburbs, which are now older, more decrepit, more dilapidated, far away from anything. There's no jobs out there. There's no supermarket. It's just a mess. And the inner city becomes a place that's expensive and posh, and
And I'll give you a great example. I went there last year. And I went to Detroit and Chicago. And exactly what you just said, my friend was taking me around, showing me all these Chicago and the city. And it's like, this place, you just don't go there. The police are scared to go there. And even in Detroit, the city, so beautiful, skyscrapers. And then when you get out of the city, people living on the street. Okay, this is Detroit. Just look at this place, but don't go out.
Yeah.
Because you'll see a different side of it.
Yeah. And Detroit it really touches my heart. I volunteered in Detroit for a whole summer.
Right.
And we were working with the Boys and Girls Club. Organized a large community concert. We had to build the whole stage ourselves in the park and do a lot of like we just did it by ourselves. The city is broke. It's suffered tremendously from the deindustrialization. The car factories are gone. The jobs are gone, and it's dangerous. It's sad. It's crime ridden, and it was a place that has a lot. It's a place that has a lot of kids who need help. So I was always very active in my community in D.C. And then there was an activist from Detroit who was in D.C. And she told me, "Hey, can you come do some of what you're doing in D.C. Up in Detroit?" And so I went there for one summer and helped out for a few months.
Yeah. They can afford to build a $300 million baseball stadium, but for the rest of the people that are living there, it's just
Like I say, you can't spell capitalism without cap.
That's right.
There's so much cap going on when they talk about what's great about capitalism, which just chooses to ignore the fact that, well, those benefits are really for select few people, and a lot of people are homeless, like you said. They're living in the streets. From California to Detroit to New York, a lot of people living in the streets, and working poor, 2 jobs, but you can't afford rent, live in your car, and that's the new normal.
Yeah. I love America. Don't get me wrong. It might sound like I'm bashing America, but I love I've been there maybe 6 or 7 times now, so I really do like it. And I've got some really good friends. I just want it. I want it to be better. You know?
Yeah. That's what we all want. I think most people just make the world a better place. I have a song that's literally called "Make the World a Better Place," and I feel like that's always been my motivation anyway.
Yeah. So how long did you stay in the US before you decided? Because it says here that you come to Shanghai in 2015. So you were in Cameroon, then you've been in France, you've been in the US. What was the decision to come to Shanghai?
Well, it was almost accidental because initially I had been planning on going some West African country I was going to go to because I had just graduated from the University of Virginia.
Right. And what was your major in music?
No, my major was politics education.
There you go. Why didn't you follow in that?
That's what I wanted to do because I was going to go for the Peace Corps.
Right.
I signed up for the Peace Corps. I went through the process. I got accepted.
Wow.
And I was supposed to head off to West Africa, but then they had an Ebola outbreak. And so I was like, okay, so I guess I can't go there right now. That got canceled.
Yeah.
And the other offer that made to me was Nepal.
Right.
And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, but I started looking into it. I was like, high altitude living.
Yes.
It's a challenge in and of itself. And so I was like, oh, I don't think I want to go to Nepal. And so a friend of mine was like, well, I'm going to China, and there's a lot you could do out there, because as someone who has always used hip hop as a way of connecting with people, they're like, yeah, the hip hop movement is growing over there. It's burgeoning.
Yes.
They don't really have real hip hop, because my friend had been here before. She was like, they don't really have real hip hop there. You'll be surprised with what you see, what they think is hip hop.
Yeah.
And you should try it. Like you can go out there, you can get a job teaching English, and you should try it. And I was like, okay.
There you go.
So I couldn't go to West Africa, and I didn't want to go to Nepal. So that's how I ended up in China.
Wow. And then you've stayed here all this time.
Yeah, because just like she said, they don't have real hip hop here. So I felt like the amount of acceptance I got for bringing authentic hip hop here was a very good feeling. The same thing I had done in Cameroon and in France.
Yeah.
Now I was able to do it out here.
Yeah.
So I was like, great.
So with your music, you said that your first demo was 15, did you say?
16.
16, right. And this was in New York, right? Obviously. So.
Oh, no, this was in Cameroon.
Oh, Cameroon, right. So what was the scene like there? And were you getting shows there, or was there a bit of a vibe there? Yeah.
So when I got to Cameroon, hip hop was fresh, new, and breakdancing. It was. There were no rappers. It was all breakdancing. The scene when I was 16, we did a lot of shows.
Yeah,
I was going to clubs since I was 14. Which is one of the good things of the third world. Like,
how were they accepting it? The crowds, were they reacting to it?
Oh yeah, because the music was popular.
Right.
So, we were dancing, and we would do like lip syncing and stuff like that. We were 14.
Yeah.
We weren't rappers. We started writing our own songs, but as I've learned now as a music professional, there's a huge gap between writing a song, being a kid writing a song, and putting out a finished, professionally done piece of music.
Yes.
So even at that age where we were like writing our own little songs, we couldn't perform them. They were just like little silly things we were doing. We didn't have music for it.
Yes.
So we started using other people's music. And then we would sing our songs on other people's music. But in the beginning, we were just lip syncing, and we would take popular songs, and we'd go on stage, and we'd be dancing and performing and lip syncing, and we did a lot of hip hop shows like that.
But you're getting your chops. You're getting you're learning on the go.
Yeah. So since I was like 13, 14, I was doing that. Yeah. And then by the time I was 16, I was like, okay, I want to actually record some of my own songs. Yeah. And so that's when I did my first.
And what was that experience like?
It was it was awesome. I mean, because like I said, there wasn't anybody rapping at that time in Cameroon. There was nobody else was rapping. Yeah. We were all dancers. We were all freestylers. But as far as recording a piece of music professionally, and it wasn't like super professional, you know, I was 16. Yeah. But as far as doing that, no one else was doing it. Yeah. So it was really popular. That tape I made become a collector's item. It's very hard to find because, you know, I only made like 50 copies or something. Right. And maybe even less than, maybe like 35. I don't remember. But the people who got them, I don't even have a copy anymore. I tried to buy one from a guy I knew who was like, no, I'm not going to sell it.
He's not going to sell it back to you.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to sell it back to you. This is like history. Like, it's hard to get this tape, and I don't even have a copy anymore. But
wow. Yeah. Well, there you go, people. If you get a chance.
If you ever come across this cassette tape, oh my goodness.
Yeah, get in contact with Skinny.
I'll pay you like $1,000 for this cassette.
It's like, an open check.
Please. I want this cassette. So yeah, that was my first one.
There you go. Yeah. And then you did a tour, and then did you stay in Cameroon for a while, or did you go back to the States?
Yeah. Or? So I went back to the States, and I went back to the States in like 96, 97. It was
And musically, did you continue rapping and doing hip hop?
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. I've never stopped.
Okay.
And that's really something I'm really proud about because I feel like sometimes people who get frustrated with making art is because they're not a real artist. If you're doing it for the right reason, then you'll always do it because it's just part of what you do. Yeah. So I remember when I was living in DC now, so this is like late 90s, and I'm living right next to Howard University, most famous HBCU in the world, historically black college university in America. I'm living right next to Howard in DC. But in that scene, I was able to carve a space where people started calling me African Tupac. That was a nickname that guys in the neighborhood gave me.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were like, you're African Tupac.
Where did you get the name from?
So Skinny O.G. is kind of like a play on my real name, which is Isaac Eugene. Right. So having been doing this since I was 7 years old, I've been through so many names, I can't even remember all of them.
What was your first one?
Wow. Funky Fresh. Yeah. Come on. I told you, early 80s, man. That was me. I was Funky Fresh.
Come on.
Yeah.
Do you have, I'd love to see a photo of Funky Fresh.
That was me. Leg warmers.
Oh, come on.
I mean, we were serious. This is what it was.
Mate, you got to do it. If you're going to be serious in the music industry or any industry, you've got to live it, mate. You've got to. So, you did your first one, and then when was your next sort of full album?
Yeah, that was long after. That was long after.
Right.
So,
because you would have been studying then at that time as well, right?
Well, no, I wasn't. So this is where the journey got really interesting. So when I was in Cameroon, so after I made my first album at 16, at 17 I graduated high school and I enrolled at the Yaoundé University.
So you must have been a pretty smart boy.
Yeah, I was. Shout out to my parents. My parents had me reading like 100 books. every summer. Like during the summer, I couldn't just sit around and play. Like I had to read like a book every day or two, and my dad would make me write reports on every book I read.
Right.
Like I had to tell him what the book was about, and not just talking. Like I had to write it down.
Right.
And my dad was like, my dad worked for the United Nations. He was very much bureaucracy minded kind of fellow. So for him, everything was write a report. Like literally, that was his terminology. Write a report on XYZ. It's great. So
reading comprehension. It's awesome.
Yeah. So and he would do that for all. He'd take us to the movies, and when we get home, like, okay, everybody write a report on the movie you just saw.
Wow.
At the movie theater. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I graduated at 17.
And did your parents, were they involved in music or the entertainment industry?
Yeah. Actually, my dad was the first person from his town to ever make a record album. It was a gospel album.
Wow.
He was the choir master for the church in his town, in his village. It's not barely even a town. And so he recorded an album of the choir, and he was the choir master, the lead singer or whatever. Yeah. And he was really proud of that album. You know, old long play.
Yeah.
The 35s,
vinyl.
whatever.
Wow.
Vinyl, a 45. It was a 45. And he was really proud of that album.
I still think the vinyl have that much better sound.
They do.
You hear the crackle at the start, and then the song hits in. Yeah, it's just got that warm, fuzzy feeling.
I remember when CDs came out. That's how you know you're part of history. I remember when CDs came out, and we would listen to them, and we were like, this doesn't sound as good as the record.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more durable. It's smaller. Blah blah. They had all these advantages.
It compacts the sound. At the start, it did. Yeah. I always go back and get my record player at my dad's place and get his vinyl out, and
the sound is so rich.
Yeah.
A sound quality that it's very hard for anyone to reproduce that on a compact disc.
Are you still recording on vinyl?
No.
Right.
I never got the chance to record on vinyl
because vinyl's coming back. It's
it's a little niche thing.
Yeah.
It's cool. You can get them made, but at that time when the industry was changing, when I started putting music out, it was too expensive now. Compact discs are much cheaper. Much cheaper, and that was a new thing. So you couldn't get any vinyls pressed up anymore.
Yeah.
And this goes back to like the early 90s, where you would see the last vinyls, and by the time it was the mid 90s, you couldn't get anything on vinyl. Yeah. So by the time I was, starting to put more music out and record music, there was no more vinyl.
Right.
But yeah, my mom is also in a lot of choirs. They're very church-going folks, singing a lot of choirs, and my dad recorded the first album.
That's amazing. So it's grown. It's just your genes.
It's kept going from there.
With your vocals as well, did you have to really work on vocals lyrically? Tell us about that. Like, was it difficult at the start, or was it just come natural to you?
It kind of came natural only because of, as we said, my dad would make me write a lot. And so I'm the middle child. I have two older sisters. I had two little brothers. Right. So we all had to do that stuff. So then I started kind of following my older sister's path, because they would write a lot of, you just copy whatever your older siblings are doing. So their writing was more advanced. So I wanted to write like them. I wanted to write poetry too. I wanted to write longer short stories. They were doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I kept pushing myself. So by the time I was, I'd say 4. I'd even say 3 maybe, but definitely 4. I started writing poetry. I was writing poems for girls. Yeah, that was, for me, that was
still doing it.
I'm still doing it. I was writing poems for girls. Like, I'd see a girl I like, and I'd write something and, slip it into her desk at school or whatever, slip it into her hand. And my mom would help me with words I couldn't spell because I was 4 years old, and that's how I started writing poetry, and then writing songs just came kind of naturally at that point. But I wasn't really thinking about them too much as things that I would record. I was writing them because I loved music. So, see, my parents were into music.
Right.
My dad had an incredible record collection. He had our house was bookshelves everywhere.
Yeah.
And half were books, half were music albums.
Wow.
And so I grew up listening to so much music. He bought me my own record player when I was a kid.
Right.
It was this little Superman children's record player.
Yeah.
Like, and I loved it. And I would play my own music in my room, and he'd help me pick my own record albums I wanted to have and listen. And I would study music. I would study songwriting, study music, study why these songs make me feel this way. Certain songs will make me cry. Certain songs will make me happy. And I started doing that since I was a young child.
Yeah.
It was just something I did.
Wow.
And so by the time I started writing a lot, by the time, for example, I was in Cameroon and in all these groups, I was the songwriter for every group I was in.
There you go.
Like, everyone would be trying to write songs, and I'm like, finished, and they're still at the first line, and so I'm like, okay, I got one. And they're like, okay, can you write my part too? Write my part too? And I write for everybody in the band, in the group.
And that's continued on.
Yeah, it definitely has.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nigel the Shanghai Psychic. I can tune into your loved ones in the spirit world, but I can also tune into you, tell you about your path and the choices that you need to make and need to know. I'm currently giving 30% discount on all Tell Craig Your Story listeners. Just use the code Tell Craig Your Story for 30% off your first psychic reading with me online at Nigel the Shanghai Psychic.